So we have both of these cars finally together, and we can do a very good comparison of the two. And it's gonna be my honest opinion to having and owning both of these cars. As most of you know, these cars come equipped with the VR30 DDTT. It's a V6 twin turbo. There are a couple differences between the two, and we're gonna be talking all about performance as well, but that's gonna be later on in this video. Let's go ahead and talk about the key differences. And I'm not saying key differences as in the major ones, I'm talking about actual keys. Overall, they're both the same iconic Nissan key design. However, the Nissan key is very simple, and all it has is unlock and lock features with the horn. As for the Infiniti, we have the lock, unlock, trunk, remote start, and the horn. If you want remote start onto this car, there is an application. It's an extra feature that's electronically built in, and you have to pay for it through Nissan. Now, with the Q, what you could do to unlock the car senses the key. If you want to unlock the car, all you have to do is touch the back of this handle and the car unlocks. For the Z, it doesn't do that. You physically have to push the button in order for the doors to unlock. The trunk, you can open on the Q with the button on the back. Cargo space is pretty good for a sedan. Not the best, but it's pretty large. With the Z, there's a button underneath the Nissan and you lift up. Cargo space is pretty good for a coupe, actually. Relatively similar to the 370Z. With the Q, you can actually lower down the trunk via this handle here. However, on the Z, there is no handle whatsoever. What I like to do is just kind of grab it through here and pull down hard. The more you find yourself having to close the top with your hands here while this is dirty, you're gonna scratch it. In terms of space, I mean, this is a coupe. How much more can you ask for? Overall, it's pretty good with space inside the cabin. You don't feel cramped at all whatsoever. Comparing this to a Supra, the Supra is much tighter. Now the Q is much more spacious. Obviously, it's a sedan. However, compared to other sedans, this isn't as spacious. The Honda Accord that we own is actually much wider, and it feels less cramped than the Q50. Now, opening up the hood, the Q50 comes with hood struts, but for the Nissan Z, they like to keep it old school and they use a prop stick here. Under the hood of these cars, you can find the VR30 DDTT. Overall, in both engine bays, they look very, very cramped. This one doesn't have an engine cover, so you can kind of see my intercooler setup here. Comparing space, the Z is definitely a little tighter. As you can see, look at the gap here between the engine and the chassis of the firewall, right there. Then over here, it's much more wider. The major differences between this engine and that engine is the fact that this one comes with the new revised turbos. These turbos have electric bypass valves integrated into the housing themselves. You see them right there. So other than those turbos, you can't really see much of a difference. Intercoolers are still the same. Location of the throttle bodies, intakes. These intake boxes do look a little different than the factory ones for the Q50, but the boost inlets kind of look the same. We still don't know if the internals of this is any different than those. At least publicly, nobody has posted any information on them. But more than likely, knowing Nissan, it's probably the same. So in terms of comfort, I could say that these seats are much tighter and more narrow than the ones in the Q50. They hug you very well, so you do have some adjustability with the tilt of the lower seat, whether it's in the front or the back. This one adjusts the front, this one adjusts the back. Like mentioned previously, you don't feel tight in this car, so it's something that you can drive for a very long time without feeling too cramped or having, back aches. These seats do come heated, so that's actually a nice feature to have whenever you're very cold or if you live up north somewhere. This steering wheel does not come heated, so with the Q50, it does feel a lot more comfortable than that car. Now these seats aren't as tight as the ones on the Z. You can, however, adjust the arch on your back as well as the side bolsters That way, you know, it can plant you in a little more. But these seats do feel a lot more comfortable. I can kind of spread my legs compared to the Z, where my legs are somewhat more in a straight position. You can find a lot more leather here around my arms, so I would rather much drive this car on a long road trip over the Z. This seat and steering wheel is heated compared to the Z, which the seats are just heated and the steering wheel is not. Infotainment systems. We all know that the infotainment in this car is extremely outdated. Mine is a 2016, so all I really have are XM radio. I have, you know, Bluetooth. I can plug in my USB, and I have navigation. This car does not come with CarPlay. At least the 2016 doesn't come with CarPlay. You have to buy one of the newer models for that. Now the Z comes with a more modern infotainment system. The graphics look a lot better. It has wireless CarPlay, which is freaking dope. This is the main menu source for your audio. It has navigation, which can also give you navigation options on the instrument cluster here as well. So this car is equipped with 360 cameras. So we have cameras all around the vehicle, front, back, and off the side mirrors. With the Z, we only have cameras on the rear, nothing in the front. So with the parking, you're gonna have to really rely on the front sensor. Now with the steering wheel, one major difference between both of them, since these are both automatic, they're the paddle shifters. They are mounted onto the steering wheel. So when you turn, the actual paddles are gonna move with the steering wheel. So with the Q50, the paddle shifters are actually mounted onto the column. So no matter how much you turn the steering wheel, they are gonna be fixed, and you'll know exactly where they are and when to shift in and out of turns. The Q does come with a sunroof, and the Z at this moment doesn't have a sunroof option. As for the Q, we have multiple drive modes, and it has Snow, Eco Standard, Sport, Sport Plus. The one we all like is Sport Plus, which this one gives you a more sensitive pedal feel. It tightens up the steering, it tightens up the suspension, and it tunes your transmission to. So the drive modes on this, the Sport lightens up the throttle a little bit, gives a slightly firmer feel to your steering, and it tunes your transmission a little bit to give it more of a crispy and quicker shift. Now in terms of comfortability while driving, I believe they're fairly comfortable between both of them. However, this one does feel a lot more sportier. It feels a little stiffer just driving normal. You could take turns a little easier on this versus the Q. Even the Q in sport mode, it wouldn't feel as tight as this turning. So full weight on that car is 3820, and full weight on this car is 3600. So driving around town, this car does feel a little stiffer. Although I even have lowering springs on that, and putting that on sport mode, it does feel a lot better driving it around town. But this out of the box comes with a little stiffer suspension, I believe. This car does come with 2 pumps, just like the Q50 for the intercooler side. Has trans cooler, engine oil cooler, just like the Q50. Major difference between this one and that one is the heat exchanger. The heat exchanger on this car is about twice the size of that of the OEM one on the Q50. So in terms of the transmission, this is something that everybody wants to find out. Is the 9-speed faster than the 7-speed? Is it completely different than the 7-speed? Because the 7-speed is an old dog. Look, we all know the 7-speed is a little outdated. Back when they first announced the transmission, this transmission was actually pretty good for its time. But now with all the quick transmissions out there, plus this transmission not having any trans tunes, this transmission is being left in the dust. So how is the 7-speed different to the 9-speed? The 9-speed, I can in fact tell you that when you put it in sport mode, it does shift faster. In standard mode, it kind of feels the same as this 7-speed. So if you want to appreciate a much faster transmission, you would have to put this in sport mode. You can't just downshift from second to first. First gear is more of a coasting gear. You never really want to be in first unless you're trying to go extremely slow. So when you're trying to downshift, the last gear you should ever downshift to is second gear. Let the computer shift into first by itself. And at times in some of the videos, you can kind of hear this transmission shift a little late, and that's because it's an automatic or you're letting it over rev. So it's hitting like a soft limiter of some sort, and it kind of makes the transmission shift into gear a little slower. So if you shift slightly before red line and you're manually shifting, this transmission is relatively quick. Again, it's nothing compared to the ZF8, but being that it's a jack cooled transmission, it can handle its own. And I have a feeling that this transmission is gonna be able to get tuned very shortly, because this is a car that everybody's gonna want to modify. At the end of the day, the Q50 is a luxury car. It does look sporty, it's a great looking car. However, it's still more of a luxury sedan. This car in high speeds gets relatively unstable. I know I have the factory shocks on some springs, so you know, maybe a coilover setup will help out, but overall, this chassis I feel just isn't the best chassis to go extremely fast in. So the Q50 actually comes with an open differential. This car still has an open differential, and I cut up to a 149 60 foot in this car before, and it hooks. This car has LSD. It's a world of a difference. This car, I can literally punch it through third gear and not have to worry about it tilting over and going off the side of the road. You have more control with this car. This car is very unpredictable being open diff. So if you ever want to do a modification for this car, just so you can have more control, an LSD is a very good upgrade to have. They both have forward collision warning, parking sensors all around, lane departure warnings. So in terms of safety, they're both equally matched. Now let's talk about what everybody wants to hear. How does it perform? How do these two perform if they were stock? Well, I would say that the Z, in fact, is quite faster. The key differences to why they are quicker is, one, you have a 9-speed transmission which has shorter gearing, plus it's a lot lighter than this one. The final gear is literally the same between both of them. This car is going to accelerate a little quicker. This one is tuned. So if I was to put these on a heads-up match, this one will literally blow the doors off of this Z right now. But coming in the next couple weeks, this car is going to be getting tuned, and I am putting on high pressure fuel pumps and all that good stuff on this car. I'm gonna try to get it to a point where they're equally matched. That way I can compare both of them in a race. So if you wanna see this race happen between these two cars, make sure to subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.